This video uses short clips from copyrighted films solely for commentary, criticism, review, and educational purposes. Such use is intended to be protected by the fair use provisions of U.S. copyright law, 17 U.S.C. Section 107. All clips remain the property of their respective copyright holders. No rights are claimed, and no copyright infringement is intended.
Superman is here, and get ready because this is gonna be epic. In a world swallowed up by cynicism, our Man of Steel rises as the last beacon of hope, facing not just a humanity that stopped believing in goodness, but also his own evil clone forged to wipe out everything, and a more devious than ever Lex Luthor, spinning dark schemes to crush every last spark of faith. Amid battles that shake the earth and choices powerful enough to change the fate of the entire universe, Superman will fight to remind the world that truth, justice, and hope never die. So buckle up, because what you're about to witness is gonna blow your cape off. Because this time the real fight is for the soul of the whole damn world. It all kicks off with Superman laid out on the freezing ground of Antarctica, basically on the verge of dying. Blood's gushing out of his nose, and he can barely catch his breath after this brutal fight. Right then, a blizzard of snow rushes toward him. But it's actually Krypto, his beautiful and loyal dog, coming to find him. Krypto jumps all over him, wagging his tail, even though Superman can't move anymore. With what little strength he's got left, he begs his faithful buddy to take him back home. That's when we see Superman's suit again, rocking the classic red trunks built into the design. Just like he asked, Krypto drags him back to the place he belongs. The icy surface cracks wide open, and the Fortress of Solitude rises up, towering with its crystal castle vibe and the iconic S right on the door. Right away, Superman's robots rush over to help him out. Even though he thanks them, the bots tell him they've got zero consciousness and were only built to serve, so his thanks doesn't really mean anything to them. To help calm him while he recovers, the robots start projecting a message from his biological parents. During the recording, Superman's parents explain how they sent him from Krypton to Earth to save him, and tell him they love him more than the sky and the Earth combined, putting all their hopes in him. But suddenly, the transmission cuts off, because only half the message survived. The rest got lost or messed up on its trip to Earth. The robots tell Superman he's got 14 broken bones, plus damage to his kidney, liver, and bladder. They say he desperately needs a heavy dose of solar radiation to fully heal, so they haul him right under the sunlight to speed up his recovery. Meanwhile, we meet Angela Spica, a metahuman tracking Superman out in Antarctica, but she radios her team that for now she just can't locate him. Back in the Fortress of Solitude, Superman tells his robots he wants to get back in the fight, but the robots warn him he's only at 85% recovery. Even so, Superman brushes off their warnings and gears up to jump back into action. At the same time, we see Lex Luthor, who's also Angela's boss, leading his team and throwing everything he's got into bringing Superman down. That's when the Hammer of Baravia shows up and lands a brutal hit on Superman, leaving him flat on the ground and totally defenseless. It's like he already knows every move Superman's about to make. Right in that critical moment, a civilian named Malik Ali, who once shared food with Superman, runs over and helps him get back on his feet, but Lex Luthor spots the civilian right away. Meanwhile, Angela's tracking Superman's trail all the way to the Fortress of Solitude. She manages to catch a glimpse of him, but he disappears before she can really see much. Luthor, on his end, watches everything from his office thanks to all the cameras he's got set up. The Hammer of Baravia declares that this is going to be Superman's final fight. The crowd sees Superman lying there and starts mocking him. Meanwhile, we find out that the Hammer of Baravia walks into Luthor Corp's facilities, and it's revealed he's actually a powerful robot named Ultraman, who was only pretending to be the Hammer of Baravia to fool the public. Finally, Luthor explains that Ultraman has spent decades carefully studying Superman's every move, giving him a massive edge to strike him down without mercy. Later on, we see Clark Kent arriving at his job as a journalist. He gets a call from his parents, who greet him warmly and tell him they just wanted to say congrats and remind him they're always thinking about him, asking him not to forget them. But Clark keeps it short and says goodbye, then goes on with his day. That's when Lois Lane shows up, teasing Clark a bit with her usual playful attitude. Meanwhile, the news reports that Vassal, the president of Baravia, publicly denies any connection between his country and the guy known as the Hammer of Baravia. Clark mentions that he's had the chance to interview Superman many times. At the same time, news broadcasts show how public opinion has started turning against Superman ever since his latest appearance. Over at Luthor Corp, Lex Luthor gathers a bunch of big shots from the elite to show them what he calls the most powerful force on Earth, Ultraman, along with a squad of raptors, super beings created to wipe out any extraterrestrial threat. Luthor tries to convince the businessmen and influential figures to invest in his metahumans, arguing that Superman is a potential threat, but the representatives push back, pointing out that Superman has prevented a war, and besides, he's still pretty popular with the people. Even so, Luthor keeps insisting that Superman is dangerous and needs to be stopped, though he admits he's got no solid proof to show he's actually a real threat. Because of that, the representatives refuse to take any drastic action. Meanwhile, Lois and Clark decide to finally go on a date since they haven't been out together in the past 3 months. During their night out, they talk about all the recent chaos involving the Hammer of Baravia. Superman says he wants Lois to interview him, and she agrees. The recording kicks off and Lois goes right in asking about all the heat he's been getting lately. She points out that even the Secretary of Defense announced there'll be an investigation into his actions in Baravia. Superman explains that he stepped in over at Jarhampa and had a talk with Baravia's president, but he can't share details because it's private stuff. That sets Lois off, and she snaps that in an interview he can't just say there's stuff he can't talk about. That kind of answer makes him look bad in the public eye. Clark fires back that he did what he did because he's convinced Baravia's government is hiding some shady intentions. Lois asks if he at least asked for permission to enter Baravia's airspace, but Superman admits he didn't. He says he was acting solely as his own man and doing what he believes is right. He adds that he made that call because a lot of lives were on the line, and he truly believed he had to step in. Lois says she's been getting slammed with tons of criticism on social media because of the whole situation, but Superman points out he doesn't exactly have time to pay attention to social media. Then he opens up and starts talking to Lois about his biological parents. He tells her he's from Krypton, a planet that doesn't even exist anymore, wiped out along with all its history, culture, and everyone he ever loved. He shares how his parents sent him to Earth when he was just a kid, hoping to save him and give him a chance to serve humanity. Lois then admits that a big chunk of the public suspects he's on Earth for some shady or secret reason, which totally pisses off Clark. Frustrated, Lois admits she kind of figured this talk wasn't gonna go well and says that relationships have never really been her strong suit. Hearing that, Clark decides to leave without saying a word, walking off and leaving Lois alone and deep in thought. Meanwhile, over in Antarctica, Luthor and his team have arrived and discover Superman's ice fortress. Once there, Luthor manages to activate it and totally invades the whole place, even though Angela has no clue how he pulled it off, since that place is supposed to only open with Superman's DNA. Luthor, rolling in with his superhumans, wipes out all the robots standing in his way. Angela's a big help, and just when they've finished off every last opponent, Krypto shows up, but they only cover his face and shove him aside, not giving him any real spotlight. The truth is, Luthor's gone all the way there for one single reason: to dig up evidence that could incriminate Superman. Meanwhile, Otis, one of the guys from Luthor Corp, arrives in Metropolis carrying a box with something dangerous inside. The plan is to unleash it and keep Superman distracted while they extract crucial info from his fortress. Back with Angela, she's busy working to recover the rest of the damaged message from Superman's parents. After some serious effort, she finally manages to piece it all back together. Over in Metropolis, Otis unleashes this little monster, and Superman rushes in right away to save a dog that's about to get crushed by the creature, which starts growing into a giant beast. While all this chaos unfolds, Lois is watching everything play out on the news. That's when the Justice Gang bursts onto the scene, with Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, and Mr. Terrific in the lineup. Together, they manage to take the monster down, and right when the massive creature is about to collapse and squash the crowd, Superman steps in to make sure everyone gets out safe. Finally, the news reports confirm that luckily there were no casualties. But even after this heroic act, nobody claps. The news has been blasting stories that Superman is actually a threat. According to reports, the message from his parents was analyzed by 28 of the world's top linguists, who all confirmed the translation. In it, his parents say they love him more than the sky and the earth and tell him that his beloved home is gone forever. Still, they insist that hope lies with Superman, because after searching the entire universe, they decided Earth is the best place for him. But they also say Earth's people are simple, confused, and have weak minds, so as the last son of Krypton, he has to wipe out anyone who can't serve him. Plus, his genes and his legacy are in his hands, and he needs to honor them by ruling without mercy. After this revelation, Luthor goes public and declares that Superman is subjugating humanity and paving the way for his descendants to take over Earth, something Luthor swears he'll never allow. Because of all this, Superman wanders through the streets heartbroken, while people hurl insults and accusations at him. In the end, Superman retreats into a room. That's where Green Lantern shows up, ready to confront him, convinced, after hearing the message from Superman's parents, that Superman really is a threat. But Superman insists he never heard the whole message because the second half got damaged on its way here. Right then, Mr. Terrific steps in and tells him that the forensics department wouldn't have certified the message as authentic if there were even the slightest doubt, so there's no way it's fake. Hearing that, Superman decides to head straight back to the Ice Fortress, convinced that's the only place where the original recording could have come from. Meanwhile, representatives from different countries gather for an emergency summit to debate whether Superman really is a threat to the planet. On the news, the president of Baravia appears, claiming that Superman only intervened intervened in Baravia's invasion of Jarhanpur to enslave his people and keep them under his control. He even goes on to say that the women of Baravia are more beautiful, and that's why Superman supposedly wants them for his own personal harem. After wrapping up the interview, the president heads back to his office and slips through a secret portal that leads straight to Luthor. When they meet, the president is all pumped up, thinking they've successfully taken Superman out of the game thanks to the supposedly fake message Luthor cooked up. But Luthor sets him straight, explaining that the message is actually real. He tells him that taking Superman down was ridiculously easy, and that part of the reason was thanks to Superman's own parents. When Superman gets to his fortress and finds it totally wrecked, he comes across one of his robots named 4, who admits he did everything he could to protect it, but couldn't complete his mission. Right after saying that, he shuts down in Superman's arms, leaving him visibly shaken. Not long after, Superman realizes that Krypto is missing. Determined, he heads straight to Luthor Corp to demand that Luthor tell him where Krypto is. But Luthor swears he's got no clue what Superman's talking about. While the two of them are arguing, Eve, Luthor's girlfriend, is secretly filming them and streaming the whole conversation live. During the broadcast, people see Superman clearly upset, yelling at Luthor, which sparks a huge media scandal. At the same time, the news starts showing footage of Peacemaker, who jumps at the chance to talk trash about Superman. After all this, Superman, completely crushed, shows up at Lois's apartment. She's surprised and casually mentions she didn't even know he had a dog, then sweetly offers him a cup of hot chocolate. Superman finally opens up and tells her that the ship he was sent in got damaged on the way to Earth, and that he'd only ever been able to hear the first half of his parents' recording. Lois, trying to be supportive, tells him she believes in him, but also points out that one of his biggest flaws is trusting everyone blindly and assuming all humans are good-hearted, which she says is far from reality. Clark, looking a bit lost, asks what she meant earlier about their relationship not working out. Then he admits he's actually thinking about turning himself in, hoping maybe that way he'll be taken to wherever Krypto is. Lois, stunned, asks why he's so obsessed with just a dog. Superman tells her it's because he was entrusted with Krypto's care, and he's determined to keep that promise. Lois, unable to help herself, hugs him. Superman whispers that he loves her, and the two of them say goodbye. The next day, Superman turns himself over to Luthor's soldiers, who immediately slam him to the ground and beat him up without mercy. Shocked, Superman finds himself arrested and with a touch of sarcasm says no one's even read him his rights. But Colonel Flagg coldly explains that the court has ruled that since he's an alien, Superman has no rights under human law. After that, they load him onto a ship and fly him out to one of Luthor's secret bases in the middle of the desert. Once there, a squad of raptors escorts him to a dimensional portal leading into a pocket universe, which Luthor created by ripping open a tiny crack between the two worlds. Luthor's got access to this pocket universe through multiple portals scattered all over the planet. Eventually, they arrive at a hidden prison where Luthor's keeping all sorts of people locked up on Baravia's orders. Among the prisoners are troublemakers, political figures who've become inconvenient, and even some of Luthor's exes. He's even jailed a woman whose only crime was writing a bitter breakup blog about him. Then Superman gets thrown into a cell with Rex, a shapeshifter who can morph his body however he wants. Luthor orders Rex to transform one of his hands into kryptonite, the only thing that can weaken Superman. Rex has no choice but to obey, because Luthor's holding his son captive in a cell inside the same prison. Meanwhile, back at the newspaper office, Lois is digging into why Luthor Corp is meddling in Baravia's affairs. During her search, she stumbles across something alarming. Luthor Corp had been selling weapons to Baravia at dirt cheap prices. Just then, Jimmy, her colleague, shows up and tells her that thanks to a contact, he found out Superman is trapped in a pocket universe. Inside that pocket universe, Luthor appears in front of Superman and drops the bombshell that they've got Krypto under their control. Luthor tells him the dog's gonna stay locked up, get poked and prodded for research, and eventually be put down for good, but not before going through a whole lot of pain. He also tells Superman that he's never getting out of that place either, because it's Luthor's own private prison. Luthor even admits that if it were up to him, he'd have killed Superman already, but the governments want to interrogate him first before making any final moves. Meanwhile, Jimmy meets up with Eve, who's Luthor's girlfriend, and secretly feeding Jimmy information. Jimmy presses her about what Luthor's really planning, but Eve says she honestly doesn't know for sure. Still, she promises to dig deeper, as long as Jimmy agrees to go on a date with her. Before taking off, Eve confesses, clearly disturbed, that Luthor tortured a dog the day before, and that he hasn't finished with it yet because he's busy bragging about keeping all his ex-girlfriends locked away in his private prison. Back in the pocket universe, Superman, weak and in pain, tries to reason with Rex. He tells him that if Rex would just get rid of the kryptonite, he could help rescue his son, the little shapeshifter, but Rex snaps and flips out. Instead of helping, he shoves the kryptonite even closer to Superman, leaving him writhing in agony. At the same time, Lois meets up with the Justice Gang, dead set on finding Superman and getting him out. Mr. Terrific manages to track down Superman's location thanks to the nano-trackers he'd secretly planted in Superman's bloodstream earlier. He tells the team that Superman's in an abandoned military base, and even though the signal cuts out there, he confirms that Superman's stuck in a pocket universe. But Green Lantern and Hawkgirl aren't exactly eager to join the rescue mission. They both say they don't want to fight to save Superman. Lois, visibly pissed off, says goodbye with a dose of sarcasm, throwing a jab at Green Lantern by telling him his haircut doesn't suit him. As she's about to storm off, Mr. Terrific follows her and assures her he's coming along on the mission. Meanwhile, Vasil and Luthor bring Malik Ali into the prison, a civilian who once helped Superman by giving him food and helping him back on his feet when he was wounded. Luthor plans to use Malik as leverage to force Superman to answer every question they've got lined up for him. In the middle of his torment, Superman begs Luthor not to hurt Malik, but when they start grilling him about possible accomplices, Superman insists he's working alone. The captors don't believe him, and without hesitation, they shoot Malik in the head. At the same time, Mr. Terrific and Lois finally arrive at the secret base where Superman's being held, ready to go all in on rescuing him. Mr. Terrific picks up signs that Superman's nearby and, without a second thought, starts taking down anyone who gets in his way, shielding Lois with an energy field. Once he's cleared the path, the two of them keep moving and finally reach a tent that holds the entrance to the pocket universe. There, Mr. Terrific explains to Lois just how dangerous it is to create a pocket universe, since it could trigger a black hole and rip space apart every time someone goes in or out. Then, Mr. Terrific admits he's only helping her because it'll piss off Green Lantern. Without wasting any time, he starts cracking the code to open up the portal into that universe. Meanwhile, Rex is completely devastated over not being able to save the civilian who died right in front of him. Summoning his courage, he asks Superman if he'd be able to reach where his son is and rescue him. Superman nods firmly, and that's when Rex decides to dissolve the kryptonite he's been holding, so he'll stop hurting and weakening him. Once Superman manages to recover a little, Rex asks him why he still looks so drained. That's when Superman explains that he's in rough shape because he hasn't gotten any sunlight. He tells Rex he needs to absorb radiation from Earth's yellow sun to regain his strength. That's the source of all his powers. Meanwhile, Mr. Terrific and Lois finally manage to crack the code to get into the pocket universe and step through the portal. Once inside, they come face to face with a river of anti-protons blocking their path. If they tried to cross it, they'd get vaporized in seconds and never make it to where Superman is. Back in the cell where Superman's still locked up, Rex explains that while he can't create an actual sun, he can whip up something close by mixing various substances his body produces. Once he finishes the concoction, it bursts into a blinding flash of light, helping Superman slowly regain his strength. When Superman's fully back on his feet, he immediately flies over to the cell holding Rex's son and busts him out, reuniting the baby with his father. But then Rex asks Superman to carry his son for him, since he can't hold the baby when he's shifting his form. Together, they set out to find Krypto. But just as they're about to make their escape, they're ambushed and shoved straight toward the river of anti-protons. Right then, Krypto jumps in bravely to help out. At the most critical moment, Superman's about to get sucked into a black hole and calls out desperately for Krypto. Rex rushes in to help too, and thanks to his efforts and Superman's powerful breath, they manage to get to safety. Mr. Terrific finds them and jumps in to help them escape, getting everyone out just before the portal slams shut for good. After the escape, Superman and Lois reunite. Even though Superman's still weak, he tells Lois there are more people who still need saving. Hearing this, Mr. Terrific offers him his ship so he can travel safely. Meanwhile, Eve gets in touch with Jimmy and tells him she's got all the dirt they need to bring Luthor down. But before she hands it over, she makes Jimmy promise to go out with her on Saturday, just the two of them. But then, out of nowhere, Luthor shows up, snatches Eve away, and although she manages to send out some files, it turns out all she transmitted were provocative selfies of herself. Later on, Lois goes with Superman to visit Clark's parents. Not long after, Jimmy reaches out to Lois to tell her about Eve and sends her the photos. To everyone's shock, hidden in the background of those selfies are crucial data files belonging to Luthor, which actually turn out to be super important. Meanwhile, Luthor is gearing up to reopen the portal to the Pocket Universe, even though doing that could rip open a three-dimensional fissure. Still, the possibility of such a massive catastrophe doesn't faze Luthor at all. He goes ahead and triggers the fissure, proving exactly why creating a pocket universe is always a terrible idea. The next day, Superman's dad tells him that Lois is a good woman, and that he's noticed Clark's been different lately too. Superman admits he feels awful because his biological parents sent him here to kill, but Jonathan Kent tells him that parents don't get to decide what their kids want to be, that it's his choices and actions that make him the man he is. And today, Jonathan says he couldn't be prouder of him. They share a hug. Meanwhile, Green Lantern is watching the news about the war raging in Baravia. Superman sees it too and finds out that the children of Baravia are begging for his help, so he's ready to head over there. But Terrific steps in and tells Superman about the fissure, saying he has to deal with that first because it could wipe out the entire Earth. Later, Jimmy and Lois report back to Perry, who's the head of the news communications department. They explain that Luthor's pulling all these strings because he wants to get half of Jarhanpur for himself, and that he's plotting to crown himself king. He's even in cahoots with Baravia's president Vaisal, who created the fissure specifically to distract Superman and stop him from stepping in during the war. Mr. Terrific can't stop the fissure, and neither can the team at Luthor Corp because Luthor flat out refuses to do it. So they end up flying the ship right out of the building. Mr. Terrific explains there's a code that can close the fissure and it's stored at Luthor Corp. But before Superman can go get it, he's gotta find Krypto, who he'd taken out for a walk so the dog wouldn't go around killing his parents' cows. Then Ultraman shows up and drags Superman off to a football stadium where they end up fighting along with the meta-human Angela. Luthor orders Angela to fill Superman's lungs with air, and she does it all while Luthor watches. With Superman literally on the brink of death, they send Vaisal off to kickstart the war. Superman's body is crawling with nanites, and Luthor tells Angela to finish injecting them all the way. Superman rockets up as high as he can go, even leaves the planet, and when he can't take any more, they plummet back down at top speed. It's a fall Angela might not even survive because of the insane impact, but when they crash land, Superman's still alive, and he manages to force all the nanites out of his body. Luthor then sends in the Raptors because they realize Angela's somehow still alive, even though she's barely hanging on, and Ultraman has survived as well. That's when Ultraman's mask comes off and Superman realizes he's been cloned. Luthor had dug through the rubble left behind after Superman's battles and found a single hair, which he used to create the clone. That's how Ultraman was able to open Superman's Fortress of Solitude, because he's got his DNA. But the clone turned out flawed. He's clumsier than Superman, easier to control, though physically stronger. So Luthor orders Ultraman to hit Superman with everything he's got, trying to prove that brains beat brawn. Elsewhere, we see a little boy praying for Superman to come save them from the war. Superman tells Luthor that no matter what he does, he's not gonna win, and his plans in Baravia are doomed to fail because he's called in some friends. Turns out he sent the Justice Gang, who swoop in to help stop the war, alongside Rex and his baby. Meanwhile, Perry says they're ready to publish the whole truth, since Jimmy and Lois now know everything Luthor's been up to, that he's been stirring up the war just to have an excuse to kill Superman. Luthor wants Superman dead because, as he admits, Superman is supposedly destroying everyone, and deep down, Luthor's eaten up by jealousy. Superman, even while getting beaten down, smiles and declares that mind overcomes might. Then he calls out for Krypto. Once Superman breaks free from his clone, he sends Krypto off to gather the spheres, which were actually surveillance cameras Luthor had planted. Right at that moment, the Raptors show up too, and Superman gets ready to take them on. After taking the Raptors down, the clone comes back for more, trying to keep pounding on him, but this time Superman hits back even harder and sends the clone flying straight into a black hole. Then he heads over with Mr. Terrific to shut down the fissure, and they arrive at Luthor Corp. Superman declares that he's just as human as anyone else, that he knows how to love, and that he's also afraid. He says that every day when he wakes up, he puts one foot in front of the other and keeps going, and that he makes plenty of mistakes because that's what being human is all about. He says he hopes that one day Luthor will understand that, but Luthor shoots back that he doesn't care because the governments have given him the green light to kill Superman. That's when Krypto jumps in and starts giving Luthor a serious beatdown. Meanwhile, Lois and the rest of the team are watching everything go down, and they see the fissure finally getting closed thanks to Mr. Terrific, who cracked the code. On the news, everything comes out about Luthor, his secret collusion with Vaisal and the government of Baravia. Now the whole world knows Luthor's a traitor. It's revealed that the whole world had turned against Superman, but now everyone realizes they owe him an apology. Superman is and always will be the hero they believed in all along. Luthor has fallen, the war has been averted, and people everywhere are celebrating. Rex joins the Justice Gang after helping save the world from war. Luthor gets arrested, and all the prisoners he'd been holding, including his ex-girlfriends, are freed. Eve meets up with Jimmy, and later Lois catches up with Superman. She goes to interview him somewhere private, but really, it's just an excuse for them to make out. In the end, Lois tells Superman that she loves him too. Afterwards, Superman returns to his Fortress of Solitude, where his robots have fixed everything and even repaired themselves. He decides to finally give his robot number 4 a name. He calls him Gary. A little later, his cousin Supergirl shows up. Turns out she's actually Krypto's real owner and loves partying on other planets since their Kryptonian metabolism stops them from getting drunk under yellow suns. That's why she prefers traveling to worlds with red suns instead. Now, Superman gets ready to relax, watching a message from his human parents, reminiscing about all his memories and feeling truly happy. And that's how this story comes to an end. But there are 2 post-credit scenes. In the first one, we see Superman gazing at Earth with Krypto by his side. In the second, Superman's talking with Mr. Terrific about the state of Metropolis after the massive threat that almost wiped everything out. And now that's really the end of this story. See you next time.